Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the BioTouch Healing Workshop on prostate cancer and other conditions dealing with the prostate. My name is Paul.
Good evening. This is Bev.
Good evening, Bev. Here we go.
Hey. Oh, yep.
Welcome, everybody. Here's how tonight works, and we will have a presentation by Dr. Liu. And this is actually a previous one, so he's taped. And then he will be specifically talking about prostate cancer. But the sets of points that we'll teach afterwards in the second half of the program, we will deal with any prostate condition. So if you're going to have any questions, you're welcome to comment in the comment section, and we'll answer what we can. And if you'd like to download the workbook while you're listening to Dr. Liu, go to justtouch.com/workbook. And for this next month, that's free to anyone. Otherwise, it's usually only available to members. All right. So, you have anything you want to say before I have Dr. Liu talk?
No, I think this is going to be I remember the original one, and
Yeah. Okay.
he's very good and local in Tucson
Yes, if you're
and
here in Tucson,
very
you.
knowledgeable. Yep.
So, we'll take it away, and then we'll be back to teach the sets of points.
Let's start out with the title of the talk tonight. It says "How Not to Die from Prostate Cancer." I actually borrowed that from a book, and I'm gonna show you in a minute. And this story actually was listed in that chapter. And this is about a happily married father in his early 50s. He was an engineer and a self-described health nut, a runner who had always been at a healthy weight. He actually controls his weight well. And then he always tried to make good choices out of a respect of his body, and was lucky to have descended from long-lived, healthy ancestors. So he also got some good genes, okay? And then he stayed away from tobacco, alcohol, drugs, and kept a great diet based on healthy foods recommendation from the USDA. Well, sounds so far so good. But there's a little problem I'll show you in a minute. He convinced his family to switch from whole milk to skim milk, and from beef to fish and chicken. Like most of my patients told me that's what they are doing in terms of changing their lifestyle. And in this case, he ate lots of chicken. So my question is, what's wrong with this picture? So when you're listening to this story, and you might go, nothing wrong. I mean, he actually was a pretty good, based on all most of the doctors will say too. However, he was diagnosed with an aggressive prostate cancer, and he actually sought care at a world-renowned cancer center and underwent a radical prostatectomy, which successfully removed his cancer and left him with the daily challenge of dealing with the consequences of the surgery. That's why I says it's also a sad story, even though it's true. Is namely what the problem was, the side effect of this surgery: urinary leakage and erectile dysfunction. So, Paul, could you show this prostatectomy? I want to show you, if you haven't seen what usually the most of surgeons will do these days is operating in the surgery room with a robot, and this actually has a name. And if you look at on the left side of this picture, this is really, there's a, this a very scary looking machine. They call it Da Vinci. They actually name it Da Vinci machine. And you see on the middle picture, there's two surgeons, and basically just look at the computer, and the patients on the table, and with the nurses. And then on the lower right-hand side, that's if you see, that's where these four large probes is going to be inserted, and then the surgeon will be operating on these probes and knives, and they will cut the prostate out. So it's pretty scary. And That's pretty much most of cancer patients, prostate cancer patient will receive these days now. Okay, so next one, Paul, you can show the, let's try to be on the same page with the anatomy a little bit, the prostate itself. The prostate is a walnut-sized gland located between the bladder and the base of the penis, just in front of the rectum. Okay, you see that picture on the right, little orange color below the bladder and in front of the rectum, and that's our prostate. It surrounds the urethra, the outlets from the bladder, and secretes the fluid portion of semen. So the semen, when we have an ejaculation, the semen part is mostly produced by this little gland. And just as the glandular tissues in the breast can become cancerous, so can glandular tissue in the prostate. I often tell my patients, you know, if you were, believe in God as a, Christian, and I'm a Buddhist, but I was a Christians, I says God is always being fair too. And what happened is breast cancer for women and prostate cancer for men, both of these cancers are hormone related. And while breast cancer had a lot to do with women hormones, and so as the man's testosterone had a lot to do with. So that's why I have a patient told me today when I mentioned about this workshop, and he told me that one of his relatives, the surgeons have to remove his testicle. And once you remove the testicle, you would stop the production of testosterone, and I hope that will help stop the progression of the cancer. So estrogen for women and so there's some facts about prostate cancer. Prostate cancer is one of the most commonly diagnosed cancer among men in the United States, representing 25% of all tumors. Currently, more than 2 million American men living with prostate cancer. Autopsy studies show that about half of men over the age of 70 years old and older have prostate cancer. So, you can see 50%, half of the men, if you live long enough and past 70, and one of the two will have this cancer. Nearly 28,000 die each year from prostate cancer. However, this cancer is very slow growing. Only 7% of diagnosed prostate cancer victims die within 5 years. So in the cancer community and the medical community, if you live past 5 years, you are a cancer survivor. And whether you die one day after 5 years, from the statistic point of view, you survive the cancer. So the cancer survival, usually they use a 5 years marker. So if you made it 5 years, you're good. But it's only 7% of this prostate cancer die within 5 years. So it's not it's not like lung cancers or a colon cancer. They are pretty deadly too. But then you can see this is not very deadly in the way that was based on the statistics. The main question for the patients and the doctor now is, based on these facts, will prostate cancer become life-threatening before deaths come from other causes? Remember, number one cause of death in this country right now is a heart attack and strokes. This one disease kills 750,000 Americans every year. It's number one since the 1940s, 1950s. It hasn't changed. It's always the number one. So what if you die from the heart attack before you die from prostate cancer? So the question is, do you really want to have this pretty radical surgery and cause incontinence and erectile dysfunction? And so you have to ask the doctors, and of course, like this case story I first talked about, and he had a very aggressive kind, so the doctor has to intervene. All right, so of course, then what doctors look for is called a PSA. stands for prostate specific antigen. It's in the blood. It's actually a marker in the blood, and it's one of the major markers, not the only one, but it's one of the major markers used to determine the likelihood of a prostate cancer becoming life-threatening. Men are diagnosed as having prostate problem when their PSA levels are above 4. And that's the magic number. If your PSA is over 4, doctors get a little bit nervous. If you're around 4, 4.5, and so if you have very high numbers, then they'll get on with it right away. Okay, that would be the bad news. But this test alone is hardly a firm diagnosis of cancer, especially if the PSA level is barely above 4. So that's the question. If it's around 4, what do you do? I mean, what is doctors gonna intervene with surgery or with some other chemo or radiation? You know, it's you really have to decide. And just like I mentioned, it's a very slow growth cancer, but it also has an ambiguity of this test leads to some very difficult decision making. So should they have a little surgery or a lot of, if PSA barely above 4? Is a PSA value of 6.0 a serious problem or just a wake-up call? If it's a wake-up call, then what must they do to reduce such a number? This is the talk tonight. There's a lot you can do to reduce that number without surgery, without chemo, without any surgical or chemo or radiation intervention, okay? So, question is how we can reduce this PSA. Are we looking for a magic bullet? It's always nice to have a magic bullet. You know, we don't have to do anything, don't have to change anything in our life. We have this magic bullet. Sure enough, PSA drops, everybody's happy, everybody's go home and live ever happily ever after. No, we don't have a magic bullet. So to find this quote unquote magic bullet, we actually do. That's the topic for tonight. And hopefully by the end of the talk, you will see what the magic bullet I'm talking about. First, let's look at what safe assumptions were accepted by the prostate cancer research community. Number one, prostate cancer rates vary widely between different countries, even more than breast cancer. Why? It's different from country to country. It's not universal in terms of this cancer rate. Number two, high prostate cancer rates primarily exist in societies with quote unquote Western diets and lifestyles. Why? Number three, in developing countries, compared to these underdeveloped, so on, men who adopt Western eating practices or move to Western countries suffer more prostate cancer. Why? And this has all already been done, this research. So for instance, Okinawans considered one of the most longest living people in the world in Japan. But if these Okinawan, you can say, well, they have good genes, possibly, because we always like to attribute to gene. But then when these Okinawans move to United States, like for instance, southern states where they eat very greasy, oily, and animal-based diet, and a lot of these Okinawans develop prostate cancers. So that means it's have a lot to do with lifestyle. So let's go on. So when I first talk about this story that this happily married man, so why do they say it's happily married father in early 50? He's young, 50 years old, relatively, compared to some of us. And I'm 62, so he's definitely younger. And he's happily married, so he has a lot less stress, say, from marriage. That's great. And then he also self-described health nuts, so sounds good. A runner, great. And then he also has good genes, and he doesn't use tobacco. Everything looked great. But then when he says he kept a great diet based on healthy food recommended by USDA, that's where a problem starts, because they recommend, for instance, switch whole milk to skim milk, and from beef to fish and the chicken. So let's see what's wrong with all these food. Before I mention this, what's wrong with these food, I want to introduce something called resilience probability factor. And I come up with, when I put these slides together, I actually come up with this myself. I call this a balancing act. Now, what's a resilience? Resilience is defined as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, and threats or significant sources of stress. Remember, stress is a killer. So that's why if you were happily married, if you have a good jobs and everything counts, however, and that will help build up this resilience. But then once you build up resilience, then you can overcome a lot of diseases. So such as a family and relationship problems, serious health problems, or workplace and financial stressors that can bring down the resilience. And then when your body decides to deal with a cancer, how resilient you have to ask yourself your body is to overcome. And we in the COVID-19 time, how resilient your immune system is to overcome this virus and survive this COVID-19 virus attack. And the probability, the second part of this resilience probability factor is the probability is the branch of mathematics concerning numerical descriptions of how likely an event is to occur. So if you have a head and tail coin, you toss enough time, you know your chance of getting a head or chance of getting tail is 50%, 0.5. So it's somewhere between 0 and 1. 0 being impossible, impossibility, and 1 indicates certainty. So what we really want to do is we want to have a very decent lifestyle to optimize this resilience probability. So this number will get closer to 1. The 1 will be a perfect number. We have a perfect resilience, perfect immune system. We're not fearful of any diseases. We'll never come down with cancer, never come down with attack, we'll always overcome bacteria and the virus, but we can't. We don't have the magic bullet to achieve that, but we can definitely try to do our best to achieve higher number for this probability. All right, so Paul, go ahead and show up this next slide and How Not to Die by Michael Greger. So please write this book title down. And this is a must-have book. And How Not to Die from Prostate Cancer, I believe is chapter 13. And it's on the right side. The first chapter is How Not to Die from Heart Disease. Second chapter, How Not to Die from Lung Diseases. And third, How Not to Die from brain diseases. Last time I talked about Parkinson's, and they actually have a Parkinson's in chapter 14. So in this one, you can see this tiny little subtitle, Discover the Foods Scientifically Proven to Prevent and Reverse Disease. Every disease that lists in this book can be reversed and can be prevented by your lifestyle. Most likely is the eating habit. The next two books, Paul, go ahead, bring up the Cancer Link to Animal Proteins. Now, this is going to be a bombshell news to you guys, most of you. Animal protein actually turned out to be one of the most lethal bad things that we're going to have for our body. I know some of you is going to go, oh, no way. Yes. And if you read these two books, The China Study by Dr. T. Colin Campbell, he's a cancer researcher for NIH and Cornell University professor. He was here in Tucson in 2012. I was 8 years younger in that picture. And Dr. Campbell now is almost 90 years old and he's still alive. And the one on the right is called Proteinaholic. And Dr. Garth Davis, I also introduced him at the Loft when he gave a talk over there about this book. He basically, the subtitle, if you read, How Our Obsession with Meat is Killing Us and What We Can Do About It. He's a bariatric surgeon. He's the one that helped 500-pound patients to get the stomach smaller so they can shrink weight. However, himself went from proteinaholic. Actually, first line in his chapter 1, he said, my name is Garth Davis. and I'm a proteinaholic. And when he went from proteinaholic to a vegan, and he does not eat anything to do with animals, and he'll show you why in this book. This is the first book, the only book I think has everything to do with protein, and he show you all the research and all the studies that prove to you animal protein actually is a bad thing to have. Okay, so next, high protein diet linked to cancer study. This one I found out in the 2018, and it was actually published in 2014, March 5th. It's by University of Southern California, and the title of the studies says, high protein diet could be as dangerous as smoking. Well, how did they define high protein diet? Actually, it was defined in the research deriving at least 20% of the daily calories from animal protein. So if you take in 1,000 calories a day, and the 20%, that's a 200 calories strictly from animal protein. And what they found, the study showed that high level of dietary animal protein in those under 65 years old were associated with a fourfold, 400% increase in their risk of death from cancer compared to those on a low animal protein diet. So the conclusion of the study, this is again, it's another bombshell. A high protein diet could be as dangerous as smoking 20 cigarettes a day. So 20% animal protein you take in every day could be from anything to do with animals. The butter, the cheese, the milk, the eggs, of course, the beef, the pork, the chicken, anything you talk about, as long as it's animals, the animal protein sum up all together. If it's 20% of your total calorie intake, your chances of having cancer is identical to a person smoke 20 cigarettes a day. And that's published by USC, and you actually can Google it and you'll see it. Now, what's wrong with the milk? The case study is on whole milk for skim milk, and that's only changed the fat content, but the protein's still there. So Mother Nature designed cow's milk to put a few hundred pounds on a baby calf within a few months. A lifetime of human exposure, consumption of these growth factors in milk may help explain the connection found between dairy consumption and the certain cancers. Now, in 2015, meta-analysis found that high intakes of dairy products like milk, low-fat milk, and cheese appear to increase total prostate cancer risk. One recent set of studies involving 100,000 men and women followed for up to 2 decades, 20 years, suggests milk may increase bone and hip fracture rates. So it's opposite to what we believe, unfortunately. And then, so what's wrong with the dairy consumption? I mean, you're talking about cheese now. A 2001 Harvard review of research, 12 of 14 case control studies and 7 of 9 cohort studies have observed a positive association for some measure of dairy products and prostate cancer. This is one of the most consistent dietary predictors for prostate cancer in the published literature. In these studies, men with the highest dairy intakes have approximately double the risk of total prostate cancer and up to 4-fold increase in risk of metastatic or fatal prostate cancer relative to low protein consumers. So enormous body of evidence show that animal-based food, particularly one based heavily on dairy, are associated with prostate cancer. So the mechanism to explain link between prostate cancer and dairy, and this is the best I can find. I think this is one you can find in the China study. Animal proteins causes the body to produce more insulin-like growth factor 1, IGF-1 in short, which in turn throws cell growth and removal out of whack. The cell growth and removal, they have to be in balance, stimulating cancer development. Remember, cancer cell is out of control growth of cells. Animal protein suppresses our own body's natural production of supercharged vitamin D, an active form of vitamin D, they call. So vitamin D, we know we can get some sun exposure, we can get some supplements, and then this is supercharged vitamin D we take in, and we need it's an anti-cancer. But animal protein suppress the production of this. So and then if you drink lots of milk, you think you do a lot of calcium, but you can see the study show actually cause a fracture. So it's not the case. But if you're taking a lot of calcium, like you found in the milk and dairy, that also suppresses the production of supercharged D. So it's a double whammy. You're taking the animal protein and the excess of the calcium from dairies, and both it's gonna suppress the the vitamin D production. So if you don't get any sunshine, you don't have a D, and the D, the supercharged D, is responsible for creating a wide variety of health benefits in the body. Persistently, low levels of supercharged D creates an inviting environment for different cancers, autoimmune disease, osteoporosis, and other disease. Remember, we have to increase that probability towards 1. So if you do all the things right, including the dairies and cutting off the dairies, and that, you actually moving that predictors, that probability towards 1. So what's wrong with egg and poultry? I know do I have enough time to, Paul? Okay, so I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna basically, and I wanna, Paul's gonna have all these slides. So if you're really interested in, you can ask Paul, and he can. This is no proprietary information. It's all published. And I just want to mention one more slide. And they actually found out if you do exercise and on mostly plant-based diet, like what I'm doing. I'm myself, Paul knows, I'm a 27 marathon runners at age 62, and I accomplished these 27 marathons in the last 7 years. And I'm a vegan for 11 years. Why? Because I know of these studies. So if I combine the two, you don't have to be a marathon runner, you don't have to be vegan, but you have to do a lot better than you if you have a poor lifestyle, lots of meat, lots of dairy, and sedentary. You have to change so that way you can use these two things to decrease the risk for prostate cancer. And so this is I basically live up to Paul. So the only thing that's wrong with this engineer in the study is he just need to eat a lot more plant-based food and cut off the animal-based stuff. That's it.
There we are.
Sorry, I was
We're
muted.
back. I was muted too.
Oh, okay.
So that was a lot of information, everybody. And
You know, I didn't even remember I didn't even remember half of what he
Nah.
said, um
but it's
you
perfect.
know, remember the old adage, you are what you eat?
Right.
That came out years and years ago. But
Yeah,
it's
it's good.
it's
I mean, what I really liked though was the idea of resilience and stress as we're going to move into biotouch. I mean, I have a prostate condition, right? I got these high numbers. I'm going through the whole thing. I'm trying to do, but everything I'm learning too is about just moderation. You don't have,
Yes.
like he said, you don't have to become a vegan,
Right.
But the thing I realized more and more as I listened to him, when you're dealing with the hormones, when you're dealing with stress was a huge factor, cortisol levels I was reading,
Yes.
and resilience, building the body, building it. And I was thinking of Lipton, just love, putting love into the
Yeah.
quotient.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing too, because a lot of what he was saying really rang true for me. But the stressors, he's talking about all these stressors, and of course you and I talk about that a lot in terms of how biotouch can address that, the cortisol levels. But it always comes down to this, that resilience can also be called in the body the immune system.
Right.
And as we know through Kenna's research with BioTouch, the ultimate is to have a resilient immune system, and BioTouch can really help with that for sure.
So we're going to take the next part of this workshop and we're going to teach you the points. Bev's going to teach it. I'm going to play techie. And please remember too, we're not just, these points work for all prostate conditions. You might have BPH, you might have swollen prostate, you might have prostatitis. Those high numbers of the PSA I've learned could be 3 different things and then they could all be combined. And so, you know, there's a lot of other information. If you want more of the research I've done personally, please contact us. So these sets we're going to teach you can work for any prostate condition that you're working with. So we're going to have, so again, you can download the manual while we're going over this, justtouch.com/workbook, and you can follow along as Bev teaches us the points.
Okay, and here we go. So let's begin with this first page just to kind of give you a overview of every month. Each workbook will have an overview of the condition that we are going to present. As you can see tonight, it was prostate cancer, and some other information on that page for you in terms of our foundation. So let's move into this next page entitled, What is BioTouch? And we always like to go over these 4 little bullets because we're hoping that every week we have new people joining us who might not really know what BioTouch is. And that's what we're going to do here tonight, go over those with you. So just to, for those who do know what BioTouch is, and for those who might not, BioTouch is, as it says here, a very simple hands-on technique. And you use the first 2 fingers of your hands to lightly touch on the body. This is a technique that has a specific setup to it. So we will go through some of those sets of points that we're going to show you tonight for this particular condition. The definition of BioTouch is one person touching another person lightly on the skin. So the light touch is very, very important in this technique. And it really does seem like the lighter that you can touch on the body, we say like a butterfly, it speaks louder to the body. So it's non-invasive and a very gentle, loving touch that really helps the body to begin the healing process. So BioTouch is easy to learn. We say that, and it is. Children have learned it, have taken our classes, and have become even certified. So there you go. Children can learn it, and it's perfect. It's perfect. BioTouch is a complement to any healthcare program. We like to say it's a complementary, it's integrative, it's holistic. The point is BioTouch can be used in conjunction with anything, whether it's a diet, whether it's working with a doctor, a strict diet, maybe you're doing other modalities, whatever it is that you're doing as your healthcare program, BioTouch is only going to enhance that journey. So it's perfect for everything you might be doing. It has no levels of ability. Everyone is effective, and the first time that they use it. No ability, no levels of ability. This is because BioTouch is meant for every single one of us, all people. It's accessible and it's meant for all of us to use with each other. So, of course, you don't have to go through any special levels of learning. You don't have, spend years being good enough to use it. You can use it immediately, and you can learn it very simply and use it and be effective. So I don't know too many modalities at this point that we can say that about. It's a very unique technique in that. And it requires no special preparation, a belief, or a state of mind for you to be effective. So you don't have to clear yourself or put a protective boundary around you, not to get somebody's negative energy, or you don't have to have a belief system. You don't have to be in a really great state of mind in that moment. What's the only thing that's required is that you have compassion for another human being, and that you can step in and in that moment give somebody some care and that loving touch and help them with their stress, with their pain. This is what BioTouch is here to do, and it is, again, for every single one of us. So real quickly, what we're going to do is we're going to go over these little grade bullets right there, practicing BioTouch. Very, very simple. We always want to wash our hands before you touch someone in a session. Again, it is taking the first two fingers of your hands and touching another person lightly on the skin. You're going to be using those first two fingers in a butterfly-like touch. And we're asking that you hold those points 6 to 8 seconds each. Can be practiced anywhere, anytime, with anyone. And more than one practitioner can work with a recipient, as we're going to see when we go into the greeting, the first set we're going to introduce to you. So we're going to begin every session with what it says called the greeting, and we will definitely be going over that. So let's go to this next page. We're not going to go into the terms. Those we present those in our trainings, but we do like to point out those first two bullets, the associate and the recipient. This is the relationship that is built in this healing relationship between two people. The associate is the person who is going to perform the procedures, the BioTouch. And we like to quickly go over what the dictionary describes as an associate, which is two different definitions. One is often in the company with another, implying an intimacy or equality. And that's what we have discovered about BioTouch. It brings us into an equality. That's the true definition of a relationship. And so that is what happens. And the other one is one having an interest in common with another. When you are caring, you have an interest in common with another. This is the intimate relationship that you're going to share. The second bullet, the recipient, is the one, of course, that receives the touch and completes that whole relationship of healing. Both people, both of them, benefit from practicing BioTouch together. It's just the perfect relationship. So, Paul, did you want to say something about the way our...
Yeah, so if you'll look at the manual here, you have 2 pages for each set of points. As you see here, the greeting. And the first page of it has the little numbers where the points are and a synopsis of where to touch those points. The second page of each set is a description in words how to find those points. Those points will be the same as the video that we're going to show, and you get to that video by clicking on that where it says click here to watch the video. So those are the 2 pages each set will have as we go through it here.
So we're going to begin, as I said, with the greeting. This is going to be the first set you will always begin with before you address any other part of the body for the recipient. This seems to be the key that really opens the body up to, it almost prepares it for what's coming. And what's coming is BioTouch. The body recognizes it and literally knows what to do with that touch. So this is what sets up the harmony in that relationship between the associate and the recipient that we were talking about earlier. The one thing, and it will go over this in the video, but I will just bring it up. This is going to be the only set that we will use one hand, which is the dominant hand, your dominant hand, to touch both of those points in this greeting. It's the only one you're ever going to use that for, but you must use this prior to anything else. And even if we've talk about this all the time. Even if you're only able to do the greeting itself, something is going to happen for that body. It just recognizes it. So let's go ahead and watch the video.
The greeting is always performed at the beginning of each session. It's the only set that uses one hand and the only set that indicates which hand to use. The greeting is performed with the dominant hand. If you are right-handed, use your right hand. If you are left-handed, use your left hand. The greeting is made by touching at point 1, which is in the fleshy area just below the bottom of the breastbone or sternum. Hold this point for 6 to 8 seconds. Then, with the same 2 fingers, touch point 2 on the back. To find point 2, look for the big bone at the base of the neck. From here, move 1 to 1.5 inches to the left. This is point 2. Hold this point for 6 to 8 seconds. More than one associate may work with a recipient provided that all of the associates perform the greeting. If the associate or the recipient leaves the session, or if someone who hasn't done the greeting touches either the recipient or the associate, the greeting must be re-established. Then the session may proceed from where it was interrupted.
The next set we're going to present to you is called the metabolism set. And this is a really very effective and very important set to use because this will help the body to regulate, to help it assimilate and to get rid of anything that's going on in the body. So this is going to be what we recommend, the second set you're going to be using for prostate issues. So let's go ahead and watch the video, another person doing that.
The metabolism set can be used to help the body assimilate what it needs and eliminate what it doesn't need. The metabolism set has 2 steps. Step 1 involves touching points in matching fire along the large muscles on the front of the neck. Points 1 and 1 are located above the collarbone in the soft indentations on both sides of the notch at the top of the breastbone. Points 2 and 2 are halfway up the neck on the front of the large muscles. Points 3 and 3 are at the top of the neck on the front of the large muscles. The second step involves holding a point on the front of the body and touching points next to the spine on the back. Hold point X on the front of the body is on a line directly between where the nipples would be on a youth and is 1 to 2 inches to the left of the breastbone. Another way to find X is 1/3 of the way up the breastbone from greeting point 1 and 1 to 2 inches to the left of the breastbone. The points on the back are located next to the spine, forming a rectangle around the breakover point. The breakover point is where the bottom of the rib cage joins the spine and can be found by imagining a line directly through the body from greeting point 1. To perform step 2, find hold point X on the front of the body and touch points 1 through 4 on the back. Point 1 is approximately 1 to 2 inches up from the breakover point on the left spine muscle. Point 2 is directly across from point 1 on the right spine muscle. Point 3 is 2 to 3 inches below the breakover point on the right spine muscle. Point 4 is used to address blood sugar problems and is added to the other metabolism points when needed. It is located across from point 3 on the left spine muscle.
The next set is the head set. which addresses anything that might be going on with the brain. I think in the situation with prostate cancer, those hormone imbalances that might help to be regulated. One of the ways that you can help is to do this headset. It's very, very effective. So let's go ahead and watch that video.
The headset can be used to address conditions related to the brain. There are 4 steps in this set. In step 1, use through-fire to touch points A and A. Point A on the back of the head is in the center of the neck at the base of the skull. Point A on the front of the head is at the center of the forehead where the forehead begins to curve to the crown. Step 2 is performed in crossfire with the fingers of each hand touching on opposite sides of the head. Hold at X, which is in the indentation beside the neck muscle at the base of the skull. It is the same as point 1 of the back set. On the opposite side of the head, touch points 1 through 5. Points 1, 2, and 3 are on the ridge line formed where the skull curves up toward the crown. Point 1 is above the outside corner of the eye on the ridge. Point 2 is above the front of the ear on the ridge. Point 3 is above the back of the ear on the ridge. To locate point 4, move down the head toward the base of the skull to a horizontal indentation approximately 1/3 of the way down from the top of the ear and 1 to 1.5 inches behind the back edge of the ear. Point 5 is opposite hold point X at the base of the skull. Point 5 now becomes the new hold point as points 1 through 5 are touched on the opposite side of the head. In crossfire, touch point 1 above the outside corner of the eye on the ridge, point 2 above the front of the ear on the ridge, point 3 is above the back of the ear on the ridge, point 4 is a horizontal indentation approximately 1/3 of the way down from the top of the ear and 1 to 1.5 inches behind the back edge of the ear. And point 5 hold point X at the base of the skull. Step 3 is performed in matching fire, touching points 1 and 1, two and 2, three and 3, four and 4, five and 5. Finally, in step 4, place the open palms of both hands on the head covering points 1 through 3. Be careful, don't let your hands touch each other.
And the last set is the lower abdomen. As you can see in the diagram, this will be used to address any prostate issue in that area. You can see it says work firmly. This is the only set that is asked to do that with. So just know that all the conditions and all of the organs in this area can be addressed, and that is prostate as well as all the reproductive conditions and everything. So let's go ahead and watch them do the lower abdomen set on the video.
The lower abdomen set may be used to address any conditions or organs which are located between the navel and the pubic bone. This might include conditions of the reproductive organs, the colon, the bladder, or hernias. When working on the lower abdomen, it is helpful to press firmly into the flesh. But while working firmly, be careful not to cause discomfort to the recipient. The lower abdomen has 3 steps. Step 1. Locate hold point X, which is on the pubic bone. Do not press firmly on this point. While holding X, touch points 1 through 5 with the other hand. Point 1 is located just below the navel. Point 2 is in the soft tissue to the inside of the pelvic bone, low on the abdomen. Point 3 is the same point on the opposite side of the body. Point 4 is in the soft tissue just inside the high point of the hip bone. Point 5 is the same point on the opposite side of the body. Step 2. With the palm open and flat, slide the entire hand under the recipient's body and place the first 2 fingers of this hand in contact with point T on the sacrum triangle. Then with the other hand touch points 1 through 5 and X. Point 1 is located just below the navel. Point 2 is in the soft tissue to the inside of the pelvic bone, low on the abdomen. Point 3 is the same point on the opposite side of the body. Point 4 is in the soft tissue just inside the high point of the hip bone. Point 5 is the same point on the opposite side of the body. And X, which is on the pubic bone. After completing this step, enhancements in local work may be performed wherever a recipient is experiencing difficulties of any kind. Step 3. In matching fire, touch points 1 and X, points 2 and 3, and points 4 and 5.
So there you have it, folks. The sets of points. Now, there's a couple of things just to bring up. If you're dealing with prostatitis and you have the entire manual, you'd want to add the infection point. That would help with the inflammation. And then also, when you're at home and it's just low and you're just doing it with your partner, there's a really good way to do that extra work. And one is to take those 2 fingers on the hold point that we showed you on that pubic bone, okay? And take the other hand and go underneath the scrotum, under the peritoneum there, right underneath where that prostate is. So you're really getting a through fire into that prostate. And you can even work into the groin area and do through fires. Or while your hand is underneath there, do some local work under the scrotum, the peritoneum there, to really touch all around that prostate. So those kind of things we don't do here at the center, but easy to do at home with your loved one. So those are things you can do all around, just zap around that prostate, just as if you were going in for radiation.
That's it. You know, just to remind everybody, these sets of points that we present to you in our workbooks, these are just the basic ones that we feel to get you started. This will address it, but as Paul says, things might come to you. You might want to, depending on the situation, add other sets of points. That would be absolutely perfect. So just know these are just the basics that we gave to you tonight.
And we're here to answer any of your questions, anything you need to know about how to apply BioTouch. I did post the charts that Dr. Liu was talking about. They're posted on Facebook and they're posted on YouTube. It'll also go out into an email, and you can just download those few charts that he was showing in his presentation.
Great.
So it was another wonderful workshop. We'll see you all next month for another wonderful workshop. So
Yes.
thank you, Bev, for your time, and thank you all for
Thanks,
joining
everyone.
us. Bye.